Don't come to the wedding. My mom texted you and your kids just make things awkward. My sister reacted with a laughing emoji. I replied, then you won't need my card for the venue. The group chat kept buzzing with laughter, completely unaware of what was about to happen next. Here's the story rephrased for a YouTube narration. Hook. I thought my heart was shattered when my own sister and mother uninvited me from a wedding via text, just 3 weeks before the big day. But what came next was a betrayal so deep, so utterly shocking, it completely unraveled everything I thought I knew about family. Story. My name is Randy, and I'm 34. I'm a single mom to 2 incredible kids, Tyler and Emma. 3 weeks before my sister Natalie's wedding, my phone buzzed. It was a group text. And it wasn't good. Randy, my mom typed, we think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward, and we want this day to be perfect for Natalie. My sister Natalie, the bride-to-be, chimed in immediately with a laughing emoji. A laughing emoji. My blood ran cold. Fighting back tears, I typed, then you won't need my card for the venue. The family group chat exploded with more laughter, completely unaware of the earthquake I was about to unleash. See, growing up, I always knew my place in our family hierarchy. My mom, Diane, was the ultimate perfectionist, obsessed with appearances. Our house was immaculate, our clothes pressed, our family photos always magazine-ready. But beneath that polished surface, a complicated web of favoritism and impossible standards. Natalie, 3 years younger, was always mom's golden child. Blonde, petite, effortlessly embodying everything mom valued. Cheerleading captain, homecoming queen, business degree. She was mom's dream. Me? I was the black sheep. Wild curly hair, sketch pads instead of pom-poms, always questioning authority. By 16, I knew I wanted a creative career. When I told them I was majoring in graphic design, Mom actually cried at the dinner table, lamenting how I was throwing away my potential. Natalie just patted her hand sympathetically. The chasm between us only widened when I got pregnant with Tyler at 24. I was in my final year of college. Tyler's dad was long gone. When I told my family, Mom's first words weren't, "Are you okay?" or "How can I help?" No. Her first words were, "What will people think?" Natalie, fresh from her MBA, looked at me with this sickening mix of pity and superiority. "Oh, Randy," she cooed. "How are you going to manage a baby? You can barely manage yourself." Mom just nodded along. Despite their lack of support, I finished my degree, gave birth to Tyler between final exams, and graduated 3 weeks later. My newborn was in my arms, but my family was nowhere in the audience. Those early years were brutally hard. Freelance design from my tiny apartment, nursing with one hand, surviving on fumes. My mom would occasionally visit, but they were more like inspections. Criticism about everything. "You should have thought about all this before getting pregnant." She'd sneer whenever I mentioned being tired. Her help always came with strings attached, making it crystal clear I was a burden, an embarrassment. For years later, I met David. He was kind, creative, and for 2 years, I really thought we'd build a life. Emma was a beautiful surprise, initially bringing us closer. But by the time she was 2, David's musician career meant irregular income and long absences. He eventually moved to LA for an opportunity, effectively leaving us behind. Promises to stay involved faded into missed child support payments. So, there I was at 28. Single mom of 2 wonderful, energetic kids. Making it work through sheer determination. My reputation as a reliable graphic designer grew. I built a home business, allowing me to be there for school pickups, for sick days, working late into the night after the kids were asleep. Family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Mom would fawn over Natalie's career and dating life, then make pointed comments about my kids' behavior or my appearance. "Randy, you might want to try that new diet I read about," she'd announce across the Thanksgiving table. Or, "Can't you get Tyler to sit still for 5 minutes?" Natalie was never so fidgety as a child. The comparisons were endless and always, always unfavorable. Natalie's trendy apartment versus my modest rental. Her designer wardrobe versus my practical mom clothes. Her business trips to New York versus my rare treats of taking the kids to the local amusement park. The worst part? Watching my children absorb it all. Tyler, so perceptive, began to withdraw around his grandma and aunt. Emma, naturally bubbly, would try harder and harder for their approval, only to be corrected for being too loud or too messy. Still, I persisted. Family is family, right? The kids deserve to know their relatives, even if those relatives are deeply flawed. I brought them to Sunday dinners, remembered birthdays with handmade gifts. I hosted holidays when I could afford it, enduring Mom's subtle rearranging of my decorations and not-so-subtle improvements to my cooking. Then came the family dinner 6 months ago. Natalie announced her engagement to James. His father owned the largest real estate development company in our county. Mom practically vibrated with excitement, already envisioning the social boost. Just think, Diane, she mimicked James's mother, Our grandchildren will have the best of everything. I watched Mom's eyes slide over to Tyler and Emma, quietly playing cards. I knew exactly what she was thinking. In her mind, my children weren't part of that grandchildren equation. They were the complications. The less-than-perfect extensions of her less-than-perfect daughter. As everyone toasted, I smiled. I offered congratulations. But I already knew this wedding was about to become another battlefield in our family's long-running war of appearances versus reality. To my surprise, the very next day Mom called. "Randy, we're having a preliminary wedding planning lunch on Saturday. Natalie would like you to be there." She made it sound like an honor. "Eleanor Wilson will be joining us, so please wear something appropriate." The pause before appropriate spoke volumes. But I tried to be positive. Maybe this would bring us closer. Maybe Natalie genuinely wanted me involved. That Saturday, I arrived at the upscale restaurant in my nicest blouse, my only pair of stain-free dress pants. Emma had been fighting a cold, so I was 7 minutes late. Mom's tight smile told me those 7 minutes had been noted, filed away as another failing. Eleanor Wilson was exactly as I'd imagined, expensively dressed, perfectly coiffed, radiating old money confidence. She assessed me with a quick glance, taking in everything from my scuffed flats to my frizzy hair. "This is Diane's older daughter, Randy." Natalie introduced me with a wave of her newly manicured hand, the massive diamond catching the light. "She does some kind of computer art or something." "I'm a graphic designer," I corrected gently, extending my hand to Eleanor. "Lovely to meet you." "Congratulations." The lunch was all about venues, guest lists, color schemes. Every time I offered a suggestion, it was politely acknowledged, then immediately dismissed. "What about incorporating some personal elements into the invitations?" I ventured. "I'd be happy to design something custom for Natalie and James." "Oh, that's so sweet," Eleanor replied, patting my hand. "But we've already been in contact with Harringtons. They've done all the society weddings in this area for generations. Very exclusive." Mom beamed. Natalie nodded. "They did Melissa Porter's wedding last year. You know, the one featured in Ohio Bride magazine." I just nodded and took a long sip of water, swallowing my offer along with my pride. As the weeks passed, my involvement dwindled. I'd get texts about decisions already made, framed as updates, not invitations for input. The only area where my participation seemed actively desired? Financial. We found the perfect venue. Mom announced during a rare phone call. The Grand Pavilion at Lakeside Gardens. "It's absolutely stunning, but with all the extras Natalie deserves, it's running a bit higher than our budget." The careful pause. I knew what was coming. "I don't suppose you could contribute anything? For your sister's special day?" Despite my tight finances, I offered $5,000 toward the venue. It meant dipping into my emergency fund, postponing home repairs. But I wanted to show my support. Mom's relieved thanks and promises that I'd be fully involved going forward seemed worth the sacrifice. Soon after, Tyler and Emma bounded into the kitchen, faces alight. "Aunt Natalie called," Tyler announced. "She asked if I want to be a junior groomsman, and Emma gets to be a flower girl." My heart warmed. Perhaps things were turning around. Maybe my contribution had secured my children's places in the wedding party. That weekend, the four of us went shopping for outfits. Mom insisted on joining us, claiming her expert eye was needed. The trip quickly devolved into a stress fest. Mom criticized everything. Emma's hair, couldn't you at least have braided it properly? Tyler's posture, stand up straight, for goodness sake. You look like a hooligan. When Emma accidentally knocked over a mannequin, Mom's face went rigid with embarrassment. "This is precisely why children need proper discipline," she hissed at me in the changing room. How are they going to behave at an elegant wedding if they can't even control themselves in a department store? Before I could defend my kids, I overheard her on the phone in the hallway. Her voice low, but clear enough. "Yes, Natalie, we're trying on things now." "I know." "Yes, it's exactly what we feared. The children are completely wild, and Randy just lets them run amok." "I understand your concerns." "Yes, it might complicate things having them in the wedding party. We'll discuss it more later." My stomach clenched. Despite their initial inclusion, my children were being reevaluated. They were liabilities. Over the next few weeks, I tried connecting with Natalie privately. Texts, calls, coffee invitations. She always had an excuse, swamped with work, tastings, planner meetings. Then came the bridal shower. I knew nothing about it until I saw the photos on social media. My cousins, aunts, mom, even childhood neighbors, all raising champagne glasses. The caption, "Showering our beautiful bride with love #Natalie and James #perfect pair." I stared at those photos for hours, searching the backgrounds for any sign my absence had been noticed. There was none. They all looked perfectly happy, perfectly complete without me. Around the same time, I heard through my Aunt Susan that James's parents had hosted a formal dinner to meet Natalie's family. All of Natalie's family, apparently, except me and my children. When I casually mentioned this to Mom, she brushed it off. It was very last minute. Very small. Just immediate family. The phrase immediate family hung in the air, its meaning clear. In their minds, I had been reclassified. Extended family at best. Perhaps no family at all. Rumors started reaching me. Cousin Beth mentioned Mom said I was too busy with work for wedding activities. Uncle Robert asked if it was true I'd opted out of planning because I was uncomfortable with formal events. Finally, after weeks of evasion, I directly asked Natalie about my role. So, what exactly am I doing for the ceremony? Is there a specific dress color? And are Tyler and Emma still in the wedding party? I need to make sure their outfits are ready. Her response was vague, non-committal. We're still figuring out some details. The wedding party is getting kind of large, so we might need to make some adjustments. I'll let you know. I hung up with a sinking feeling. Those adjustments, I feared, would involve erasing my family entirely. Still, I clung to hope. Surely my own mother and sister wouldn't completely exclude us, especially after I'd committed a significant sum to the venue. I was wrong. The message arrived on a Thursday morning. 3 weeks before the wedding. I was in the kitchen, making breakfast for the kids. My phone, charging on the counter, chimed repeatedly with family group chat notifications. Conversation about final wedding arrangements. Mom had created the chat to keep everyone in the loop, but it mainly showcased Natalie's ongoing princess treatment. That morning, it started innocuously enough. Mom posting photos of floral arrangements. Everything is coming together beautifully, she wrote. Just a few last-minute details to sort out. Natalie chimed in. I can't believe it's only 3 weeks away. I was about to set my phone down when Mom's next text stopped me cold. Randy, we think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward, and we want this day to be perfect for Natalie. I froze. Spatula in hand. Eggs burning on the stove. Before I could even process it, Natalie responded, a laughing emoji. Mom's right. No offense, but James's family is really classy. The phone nearly slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. I shut off the stove mechanically, my mind racing. This had to be some kind of terrible joke. But more messages appeared. Mom again. It's nothing personal, Randy. It's just that the Wilsons have certain expectations about the type of event this will be. Children who aren't properly behaved would be a distraction. Plus, you always look so stressed and tired in photos. This wedding is going to be in all the local magazines. And then, the kicker, we still appreciate the venue contribution, of course. That was very generous. I felt like I'd been physically struck. The kitchen wobbled. Tears blurred my vision. Mom, the eggs are burning. Mom, are you okay? You're crying. Tyler stood beside me, his 10-year-old face creased with concern. Emma, behind him, arranged her stuffed animals at the breakfast table, blissfully unaware of the family earthquake. I quickly wiped my eyes, forced a smile. I'm fine, buddy. Just got something in my eye. Thanks for telling me about the eggs. Let's make some new ones. As I cracked fresh eggs with trembling hands, shock morphed into something else. A deep, burning anger. How dare they treat my children this way? How dare they act as if we were embarrassing? Accessories rather than family members? I picked up my phone. I typed a response, fighting to keep my tone controlled, dignified. Then you won't need my card for the venue. It was simple, direct, and apparently hilarious to my family. Natalie immediately responded with another laughing emoji. Good one, sis, but seriously, the venue deposit is non-refundable, so thanks for that. Mom added, don't be dramatic, Randy. This is about what's best for your sister's special day. Then my father, silent until now, chimed in. Your mother's right, Randy. Sometimes it's better to step back. No need to make this about you. More messages flooded in from other family members who had been silently watching this public execution of my dignity. Aunt Patty, Randy, dear, perhaps this is for the best. Remember Tom and Sally's anniversary party when Tyler knocked over the ice sculpture? Uncle Dave, some events just aren't kid-friendly. Nothing personal. Cousin Beth, I think what they're trying to say is more intimate ceremony equals more elegant. You understand, right? With each new message, the knot in my stomach tightened. These people had known me my entire life. They had watched me grow up, graduate, become a mother, build a career. And not one of them was standing up for me. Not one was questioning the casual cruelty of excluding family members from a family celebration. I set my phone face down as it buzzed. Time for breakfast, guys. I called, determined not to let the kids see how shaken I was. As we ate, Tyler kept shooting concerned glances my way. He was old enough to sense adult problems brewing, too young to fully understand. 6-year-old Emma chatted happily about her school field trip, periodically patting my hand when she noticed my distraction. Are you sad, Mommy? She finally asked. Your eyes look rainy. I'm just having a grown-up problem, sweetie, I answered, stroking her hair. Nothing for you to worry about. But after I dropped them at school, I sat in my car. And I finally broke. Racking sobs tore through me as the full weight of the rejection settled. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation. It was about years of being treated as lesser. of watching my children be judged and found wanting, of trying so hard to maintain connections with people who fundamentally did not respect me. When I got home, my phone showed 17 new messages. I silenced the chat without reading them. Whatever additional barbs they'd thrown would have to wait. I had client work to do. I refused to let my family drama impact my professional responsibilities. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I finally looked. Most were variations on the same theme. I was overreacting, being selfish, needed to think of Natalie's happiness. The conversation had eventually moved on to discussing which relatives would now be seated at the table originally reserved for me and my children. I curled up on the sofa, wrapped in the quilt my grandmother had made me. I cried until I had no tears left. My grandmother had been different. She'd celebrated my creativity, defended my choices, loved my children without reservation or judgment. Family is about acceptance, not perfection, she used to say. If she were still alive, she would have been appalled. As midnight approached, I made tea and sat at my kitchen table, beginning to process not just today's events, but the years of subtle, and not so subtle, mistreatment that had led to this point. The wedding exclusion wasn't an anomaly. It was simply the most blatant expression of how my mother and sister truly saw me and my children. The realization was both painful and strangely liberating. For years, I had been chasing approval I would never receive, making excuses for inexcusable behavior, exposing my children to people who viewed them as inconveniences. No more, I whispered to my empty kitchen. This stops now. The next morning, after getting the kids off to school, I called Zoe, my best friend since college. They did what? Zoe exploded after I recounted the group text. Oh my God, Randy, that's beyond cruel. That's psychological warfare. Hearing my own thoughts validated by someone I trusted helped solidify the emotional realization I'd had the night before. This wasn't a miscommunication. It was the culmination of a pattern. I don't know why I'm even surprised, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Remember Emma's 5th birthday when my mom showed up with a cake because the one I made wasn't presentable enough? Or when your sister scheduled her housewarming party the same day as Tyler's school play, then got mad you chose his performance over her new throw pillows? Zoe added. More memories surfaced, each a puzzle piece waiting for me to see the complete picture. Mom correcting Tyler's table manners in front of everyone at Christmas. Casual remarks about how much easier Natalie's life was without all the baggage I had accumulated. Family vacation photos that somehow never included me or my children, despite us being present. I think I've been gaslighting myself, I admitted to Zoe. Making excuses for them. Telling myself it wasn't that bad, or that I was being too sensitive. That's what happens when you grow up with that kind of treatment, Zoe replied gently. You normalize it. But Randy, there is nothing normal about what they're doing. It's toxic. And you and your kids deserve so much better. After our call, I felt strangely calm, like the eye of an emotional hurricane. The initial shock had passed, and a clear, cold anger had taken its place. But I knew the real emotional processing was still to come. That clarity was shattered when Tyler came home from school. Reddened eyes. A defensive hunch to his shoulders that I knew all too well. What happened, buddy? I asked, sitting beside him. He was quiet for a long moment. Jake said we're not going to Aunt Natalie's wedding anymore. Jake was my sister's 10-year-old stepson from James's previous marriage. He said it's because we don't know how to act right, and his grandma doesn't want us there. My heart broke all over again, this time for my son. Tyler, did Jake say that at school? In front of other kids. Tyler nodded, a single tear escaping before he roughly wiped it away. He told everyone during lunch. He said his dad is paying for a super fancy wedding, and they don't want it ruined. I took a deep breath, trying to contain the fresh wave of anger. Tyler, look at me. What Jake said isn't true. The reason we're not going to the wedding has nothing to do with you or your behavior. It's about grown-up problems between me, Grandma, and Aunt Natalie. Is it because we're not rich like Jake's family? Tyler asked with the devastating directness of children. No, honey. It's because sometimes adults make bad choices that hurt other people's feelings. And when that happens, we need to set boundaries. What are boundaries? Boundaries are rules we set to protect ourselves from people who don't treat us with respect. Like if a friend keeps taking your toys without asking, you might set a boundary by saying they can't play with your things unless they ask permission. Tyler thought about this. So, we're setting a boundary with Grandma and Aunt Natalie? Yes, we are. And that's okay. It doesn't mean we don't love them. It just means we expect to be treated with kindness and respect, just like everyone else. That evening, the calls began. First Mom, then Dad, then various aunts and uncles. All delivering variations on the same message. I needed to be reasonable, not make a scene, and still follow through with a venue contribution because it was promised. I let most go to voicemail, but took my father's call. Randy, you know how your mother gets about these social events, he said, his voice that familiar mix of placating and dismissive. Just let this one go. We can have a separate family celebration after the honeymoon. Dad, do you understand what happened here? Mom and Natalie publicly uninvited your grandchildren from a family wedding, humiliating them in the process. Now their cousin is bullying them about it at school, and you want me to just let it go. You're blowing this out of proportion, he sighed. No one meant to hurt the kids. It's just that this wedding is very important for your sister's future. The Wilsons are influential people. More influential than your own grandchildren's emotional well-being. His silence was answer enough. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad. My designer's brain automatically organized the chaos. I wrote, what we know. 1. My family excluded me and my children from the wedding in the cruelest way possible. 2. They still expect me to contribute $5,000 toward the venue. 3. This is part of a pattern of toxic behavior, not an isolated incident. 4. My children are being actively harmed by this situation. On the next page, what we don't know. 1. How much does James actually know? 2. What have Mom and Natalie told the Wilsons about us? 3. What's the real story with the venue payment? Is it paid? Is it refundable? 4. Who else knows about our exclusion, and what have they been told? With these questions, I decided to do some investigating. My first call was to the Grand Pavilion at Lakeside Gardens, the venue. I identified myself as Natalie's sister, helping with wedding details. I just wanted to confirm some information about the Thompson-Wilson wedding on the 21st, I said. Of course, the coordinator answered. Yes, here it is. Thompson-Wilson wedding, grand ballroom rental, garden ceremony site, 200 expected guests. Great, that's the one. I'm just double-checking the payment schedule. Has the final payment been made? The coordinator hesitated. I see that the initial deposit was made 2 months ago, but the final payment is actually past due. We've sent several reminders. This was interesting. I was under the impression that payment had already been arranged. My contribution was meant to complete the venue payment. There is a note here about a partial payment from the sister of the bride, the coordinator confirmed, but we haven't received it. According to our contract, the final payment is due 14 days before the event, which would be this coming Friday. Without it, we can't guarantee the reservation will be held. After thanking her, I sat back, processing. The venue payment wasn't just an extra they were hoping to extract from me. It was a critical component of their budget. And they were counting on it, despite explicitly uninviting me. My next call was to Aunt Susan, Mom's younger sister, the most likely to give me straight answers without an agenda. Aunt Susan, can I ask you something about Natalie's wedding? I need you to be honest with me. Of course, honey. I heard there was some drama about you not attending. Your mother said you were having some personal issues and thought it best to skip it. Her voice was carefully neutral. That's not true. They explicitly uninvited me and the kids. But what I want to know is what they've told James's family about us. Have you met the Wilsons? Susan's long pause told me she was deciding how much to reveal. Yes, I met them at the engagement dinner. Eleanor Wilson is very concerned with appearances. During that dinner, your mother mentioned you only once. She said you were an artist living in another state. I live 20 minutes away from her house. I know. And when James asked if you had children, your mother changed the subject very quickly. I got the distinct impression that she's pretending you have a very different life than you actually do. A cold realization washed over me. They're ashamed of us. They're literally hiding our existence to impress these people. I think your mother sees this as Natalie's big chance to marry into the kind of social circle she's always wanted access to, Susan said carefully. She doesn't want anything to complicate that narrative. And my children and I complicate the narrative. In her mind, yes. You know your mother, Randy. She's always been obsessed with appearances. Remember how she used to make us change clothes 3 times before visiting Grandma at the nursing home? After thanking my aunt, I made one more call, this time to a lawyer friend who specialized in contract law. I explained the venue payment situation, asking about my legal obligations. If you never signed anything, you have no legal obligation, he assured me. A verbal promise of a gift doesn't constitute a binding agreement. If your name isn't on the venue contract, you're in the clear legally. What if they put my name on the contract without my knowledge? Said I was covering part of the payment. That would be problematic for them, not you. They can't obligate you to a contract you never signed. But it might create complications with the venue if they're expecting your payment. By the end of the day, I had a much clearer picture. My mother and sister had been counting on my financial contribution while simultaneously deciding I wasn't worthy of attending. They had effectively erased me from their carefully constructed family narrative to impress the Wilsons. And most disturbingly, they saw absolutely nothing wrong with any of this. As I tucked my children into bed that night, watching their innocent faces relaxed in sleep, a steely resolve formed in my heart. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation anymore. This was about teaching my children what it meant to have self-respect, to set healthy boundaries, and to recognize when relationships were damaging rather than nurturing. We deserve better, I whispered, kissing their foreheads. And I'm going to make sure we get it. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The path forward wasn't about revenge or drama, but about justice, self-respect, and breaking unhealthy patterns. I opened my laptop and began organizing my thoughts into a concrete plan. First, I consulted with my lawyer friend Mike again. We met for coffee, and I brought all the texts and information I'd gathered. Based on everything you've told me, you have no legal obligation to provide this money, Mike confirmed. However, if they listed you as a partial payer on the contract without your signature, that could create complications for them with the venue. That's exactly what I suspect happened, I said. My mother has a habit of making commitments on other people's behalf and expecting them to follow through. In that case, I'd recommend formally rescinding your offer in writing. Send an email to both your mother and sister, CC the venue, stating clearly that due to your exclusion from the event, you are withdrawing your previously offered contribution. Won't that make me look vindictive? Like I'm trying to sabotage the wedding? Mike shook his head. It's not vindictive to withdraw financial support for an event you've been explicitly told not to attend. It's actually the logical consequence of their decision to exclude you. With Mike's guidance, I drafted a clear, firm email to my mother and sister with the venue coordinator CC'd. The message was professional, factual, no emotional language. I explained that as I'd been informed my presence and that of my children were not welcome at the wedding, I was formally rescinding my offer to contribute to the venue payment. I wished them well with their celebration and requested that they not contact me further about financial contributions to an event we had been prohibited from attending. After sending the email, I blocked both their numbers temporarily. I needed space to implement the rest of my plan without the emotional manipulation I knew would follow. Next, I focused on creating a special alternative day for me and my children on the wedding date. I wanted them to understand that while rejection hurts, we could choose to fill our lives with joy and positive experiences rather than dwelling on exclusion. How would you guys feel about going to Adventure World on the 20th? I asked them over dinner. They've opened that new water slide section you've been wanting to try, Tyler. Their enthusiasm was immediate, genuine. Both kids had been asking to visit this theme park for months. The tickets weren't cheap, but I'd been saving for a special occasion. What better occasion than celebrating our worth as a family unit? Is that the same day as Aunt Natalie's wedding? Tyler asked perceptively. Yes, it is. I thought we could have our own special day while they have theirs. But why aren't we going to the wedding anymore? Emma asked, her small forehead wrinkled in confusion. I took a deep breath, considering how to explain complex adult situations to a 6-year-old. Sometimes, Emma, people make choices that aren't very kind. Grandma and Aunt Natalie have made some choices that hurt our feelings. When that happens, it's okay to choose not to spend time with those people for a while. Did we do something bad? Her trembling lower lip nearly broke me. No, sweetie. You didn't do anything wrong at all. This is about them, not us. And instead of feeling sad about missing their party, we're going to have our own amazing day of fun. As the kids discussed which rides they wanted to try first, I reflected on how these conversations were teaching them crucial life lessons about self-worth and healthy relationships. I wanted them to understand that love shouldn't be conditional on meeting someone else's standards of perfection. That true family supports and accepts you as you are. And that it's okay to step back from relationships that consistently make you feel inadequate or unwanted. Over the following days, I continued to ignore the mounting voicemails and messages from various family members. Most were pressuring me to reconsider my stance on the venue payment, with increasing degrees of guilt-tripping and manipulation. My father tried to appeal to my sense of family loyalty. My aunt suggested I was being stubborn and selfish. My sister sent a text accusing me of trying to ruin the biggest day of her life. I let them all go unanswered, focusing instead on my work, my children, and the small community of genuine friends who had rallied around us. Zoe organized a movie night for all of us. My neighbor Barbara, a retired teacher, brought over homemade cookies and offered extra babysitting. My regular client, sensing something was wrong, sent thoughtful messages checking on my well-being. It was during this enforced radio silence that I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, the male voice on the other end took me by surprise. Randy, this is James, Natalie's fiancé. I hope you don't mind me calling you directly. I got your number from the family contact list. I hesitated, unsure of his purpose or how much he knew. Hello, James. This is unexpected. I'm sure it is. Look, I'll get right to the point. There seems to be some confusion about the wedding guest list, and I'm trying to get clarity. Natalie told me you didn't want to attend our wedding, but then I heard from the venue that there's some issue with the payment you had offered. I'm honestly confused about what's happening. The genuine bewilderment in his voice suggested he truly had no idea. I took a deep breath. James, I'm going to tell you something that might be difficult to hear. I never said I didn't want to attend your wedding. In fact, until last week, my children and I were under the impression that we were not only invited, but participating in the ceremony. Tyler was supposed to be a junior groomsman, and Emma was going to be a flower girl. What? But Natalie said, she told me you weren't comfortable with formal events and preferred not to come. She said your kids had some behavioral issues that made large gatherings difficult for them. The hurt must have been evident in my silence because he quickly continued, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have repeated that. I'm just trying to understand what's going on. The truth is, James, my mother and sister explicitly uninvited us via a group text. They said my children and I make things awkward and would interfere with having a perfect day. They still expected me to contribute $5,000 toward the venue despite uninviting us. That can't be right, he said. But the uncertainty in his voice suggested he was beginning to question the narrative he'd been given. I can forward you the entire text exchange if you'd like to see it for yourself. Would you? I'd really appreciate that. This doesn't sound like the Natalie I know, but, well, there have been some strange tensions around the wedding planning that I haven't fully understood. After our call, I forwarded the entire humiliating text thread to James, along with screenshots of some of the follow-up messages pressuring me to still pay for the venue despite our exclusion. It wasn't about trying to create problems between them. It was about finally bringing truth to a situation shrouded in lies and manipulation. James called back 30 minutes later, his voice noticeably shaken. I don't even know what to say. I had no idea this was happening. My parents have been asking about meeting you and your kids. And Natalie kept making excuses about why it hadn't happened yet. I just assumed you were busy. Or maybe there was some minor family tension, not this. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, I said sincerely. For what it's worth, I think Natalie genuinely cares about you. She just also cares tremendously about impressions and status, a value she inherited directly from our mother. I need to talk to her about this. And my parents. They would be horrified if they knew family members were being excluded like this. That's not how we operate. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I hadn't set out to create drama or come between Natalie and James. But the truth had a way of surfacing eventually. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. I had been honest, set appropriate boundaries, and was focusing on creating a positive experience for my children. For the next 5 days, I heard nothing from any family members. The sudden silence after days of constant pressure was disconcerting, but also peaceful. I used the time to finalize our Adventure World plans, packing a small backpack for each child with snacks, sunscreen, and a change of clothes. We talked excitedly about which rides to try first. Whether we would be brave enough for the new vertical drop water slide. As the wedding day approached, I found myself feeling stronger and more centered than I had in years. The initial shock and hurt had transformed into a kind of quiet determination. This experience, painful as it was, had forced me to confront and begin dismantling the dysfunctional patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades. You seem different, Mom, Tyler observed the night before a theme park visit. Not sad anymore. I am different, I agreed. Sometimes hard things help us grow stronger, like how plants need storms to make their roots dig deeper. He considered this. Exactly like that. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be an adventure. The morning of Natalie's wedding dawned bright and clear. I woke before my alarm, a mixture of emotions swirling through me despite my best efforts at detachment. Somewhere across town, my sister was preparing to become a wife. My mother was likely fussing over every detail, determined to create the perfect illusion of family harmony for the Wilsons. And here I was, choosing a different path entirely. I pushed those thoughts aside as I heard the excited footsteps of my children racing down the hallway. Mom, is it time to go to Adventure World? Emma burst into my room, already wearing her swimsuit inside out and backwards. Tyler followed more sedately, but the gleam in his eyes betrayed his equal excitement. It's going to be 87 degrees and sunny, perfect for water slides. I laughed, helping Emma fix her swimsuit. Let's have breakfast first, then we can head out. The park opens at 10 o'clock. As we ate pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, a special occasion tradition, I kept my phone deliberately turned off and tucked away. Today wasn't about what we were missing. It was about what we were choosing to create together. Adventure World lived up to its name. We spent the morning conquering increasingly daring rides, Tyler leading the charge with newfound confidence, Emma squealing with delight as water splashed around us. We took silly photos with costumed characters, indulged in overpriced theme park food, and participated in every interactive game along the midway. During a brief rest, Tyler looked up at me with serious eyes. This is better than a boring wedding anyway, right, Mom? I considered my answer carefully. Different experiences are valuable in different ways, Tyler. Weddings can be beautiful celebrations of love and family. But today, this is exactly where we're meant to be, having fun together. As the afternoon progressed, Emma won a stuffed unicorn at a ring toss game. Tyler conquered his fear of the tallest water slide, emerging with a triumphant grin. I took dozens of photos, capturing their joy and our connection. By late afternoon, exhaustion set in. Emma's steps dragged, and even Tyler admitted he was tired. We decided to head home, stopping for ice cream on the way. It wasn't until we arrived home and the kids were settled with a movie that I finally retrieved my phone and turned it on. Immediately, it buzzed with a cascade of notifications. 15 missed calls, 23 text messages, 7 voicemails. The first voicemail, from my mother at 10:30 that morning, was surprisingly composed. "Randy, I hope you'll reconsider your position about the venue payment. The wedding starts at 4 o'clock, and we need to resolve this before then. Call me back immediately." The second, from noon, had a distinct edge of panic. "Randy, this is getting ridiculous. The venue manager is saying there's an issue with the final payment. Call me back right now." By the third voicemail, at 1:15, Mom's composure had completely crumbled. "Randy, please. You have to help us. The venue manager is threatening to cancel everything if the final payment isn't made by 3 o'clock. I don't know what you said to them, but they're insisting the contract listed you as a partial payer, and they can't proceed without your payment or signature removing you from the agreement. Please." Natalie is in tears. "You can't ruin her wedding like this." The remaining messages grew increasingly desperate, culminating in a sobbing Natalie begging me to just sign the stupid paper or pay the money because the venue manager was being completely unreasonable and the photographer and florist are already there setting up. I sat down at my kitchen table, absorbing this unexpected turn. I had sent that email to clarify my position, not to actively create problems. I'd assumed Mom would simply cover the payment gap or find another solution. After making sure the kids were engrossed in their movie, I called the venue directly. The manager explained that my mother had indeed listed me as a responsible party for part of the payment on the contract, creating a legal complication when I explicitly withdrew my offer. "We tried to be flexible," she explained, "but when no payment was forthcoming and no amended agreement was signed, we had to follow our contract terms. We couldn't hold the space without full payment." "Has the situation been resolved?" I asked. "Not to my knowledge. The last update I received was that they were attempting to secure an alternative venue for a scaled-down version of the reception. The ceremony was moved to the church that was originally just for the service." After thanking her, I sat in silence. I hadn't intended to disrupt the wedding itself, only to establish boundaries. Yet, it seemed my mother's presumption in putting my name on legal documents without my consent had created exactly the chaos she had claimed to be avoiding by excluding us. At 7:30, after getting the children bathed and into pajamas, I finally returned my mother's calls. She answered immediately. "It's a bit late to call now, isn't it?" Her voice was brittle with exhaustion and barely contained fury. "I've been busy all day with the kids. I just got your messages. What happened with the wedding?" "As if you don't know. Your little stunt nearly ruined everything. We had to move the reception to the church basement at the last minute. Half the floral arrangements couldn't be transferred. The cake arrived at the original venue and had to be rushed across town. The photographer charged extra for the venue change." Eleanor Wilson was horrified by the disorganization. "I'm sorry things were complicated," I said carefully. "But I don't understand why you put my name on a contract without my permission. That created this problem, not my withdrawal of a gift I was never obligated to give in the first place." "Gift? This was your sister's wedding. Family helps family. Family also doesn't exclude family from important life events via group text." The line went quiet. "Is that what this was about? Revenge because your feelings were hurt?" "No, Mom. This was about respecting myself and my children enough to not financially support people who treat us as embarrassments. This was about showing my kids that it's not okay to let people use you while simultaneously pushing you aside." "Oh, that's rich coming from you. Always so righteous about your choices. Never mind how they affect everyone else. Do you have any idea the damage you've caused?" James's parents left early. They said they'd never seen such a disorganized event. Before I could respond, I heard Natalie's voice in the background demanding the phone. "You vindictive bitch," my sister hissed when she got on the line. "You couldn't stand that I was having something special, could you? You had to make it all about you and your issues." "Natalie, I didn't create this situation. All I did was withdraw financial support from an event I was explicitly told not to attend. The consequences came from Mom putting my name on legal documents without my knowledge or consent. You could have just paid it anyway. Or signed their stupid form. You knew how important this day was to me. And you knew how hurtful it was to uninvite your niece and nephew from being in your wedding party. You knew how humiliating it was to exclude your own sister via group text. You made your choices, and I made mine." The conversation devolved further, Natalie alternating between tearful accusations and angry threats about how I would regret this and never be forgiven. I remained calm, repeatedly bringing the focus back to the actual sequence of events and the natural consequences of their actions. After hanging up, I was surprised to receive a text message from James. "I want you to know that none of this was your fault. What happened today opened my eyes to some dynamics I hadn't fully recognized. Thank you for your honesty. I hope someday we can start fresh as family." The next day, social media was conspicuously quiet. Typically, my mother and sister would have been posting professional wedding photos with carefully crafted captions about the perfect day and beautiful celebration. Their silence spoke volumes about how far the reality had diverged from their expectations. 3 days later, I received a surprising call from Eleanor Wilson, James's mother. "Randy, this is Eleanor Wilson, James's mother. I hope you don't mind me calling. James gave me your number." "Not at all, Mrs. Wilson. How can I help you?" "Please call me Eleanor. I wanted to reach out personally to invite you and your children to brunch this Sunday. James has told us so much about his new niece and nephew, and we're eager to meet you all." I was momentarily speechless. "That's very kind of you. We'd be happy to come." "Wonderful. And Randy, I want you to know that James has explained the circumstances surrounding the wedding. My husband and I were quite disturbed to learn how you and your children were treated. That's not the kind of family values we raised our son with." After we arranged the details for Sunday, I sat in stunned silence. Somehow, in attempting to erase me from their perfect family narrative, my mother and sister had instead revealed the true dysfunction that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. The brunch with the Wilsons turned out to be a pivotal moment. Harold and Eleanor welcomed us into their spacious, but comfortable home with genuine warmth. Unlike the intimidating elitists my mother had portrayed, they were down to earth and immediately engaged with my children in a way that put them at ease. "Tyler, James tells me you're quite the baseball player," Harold said, showing him a collection of signed memorabilia. "Emma, would you like to see the dollhouse that was mine when I was a little girl? I've kept it all these years, hoping someday I'd have a granddaughter to share it with." As the children explored these treasures, Eleanor joined me on the patio. "I want to be direct with you, Randy," she said. "What your mother told us about you and what we've learned for ourselves are very different things." "What exactly did she tell you?" I asked, finally able to confirm my suspicions. "That you lived out of state, that you had made lifestyle choices the family found difficult, that you struggled with stability." Her diplomatic phrasing couldn't fully disguise the implication. "And now I see a devoted mother raising two wonderful children. James speaks highly of your work as a designer. And most importantly, I see someone who had the strength to stand up for herself and her children in a difficult situation." "It wasn't about revenge," I said, feeling it important that she understand. "It was about not allowing my children to internalize the message that they weren't good enough." "I understand that better than you might think," Eleanor said, surprising me. "My own mother was similar to yours in many ways. Appearances meant everything. I wasn't the daughter she wanted either." That conversation marked the beginning of an unexpected alliance. While my own mother maintained a chilly distance following the wedding debacle, the Wilsons began regularly including me and my children in family gatherings. Emma and Tyler developed a genuine friendship with their new Uncle James, who turned out to have a talent for connecting with children that surprised even Natalie. In the months that followed, I committed to therapy, finally unpacking the years of conditional love and subtle undermining that had shaped my self-perception. My therapist helped me understand that the wedding incident hadn't created the family dysfunction. It had merely exposed patterns that had existed for decades. "Your mother has narcissistic tendencies," my therapist explained. "And your sister learned early on that emulating your mother's values was the path to approval. Neither of them is likely to fundamentally change without their own committed therapy work." With this understanding, I began to establish clearer boundaries with my family of origin. I declined Sunday dinners that invariably devolved into criticism sessions. I limited phone conversations with my mother to 15 minutes and redirected when she began disparaging me or the children. I filtered information carefully, sharing only what felt safe and keeping our most precious moments private. The children flourished under these new boundaries. Tyler's teacher commented on his increased confidence at school. Emma's occasional anxiety about being good enough gradually faded, replaced by a natural enthusiasm for trying new things without fear of harsh judgment. My business grew as well, as I redirected energy previously spent managing family drama into developing my client base and refining my skills. I secured several large corporate contracts that provided greater financial stability than the piecemeal work I had relied on before. When Thanksgiving approached, I braced myself for the usual complicated negotiations about holiday gatherings. To my surprise, James called with an invitation. "We're hosting at our place this year," he said. "Eleanor suggested we start some new traditions. We'd really love for you and the kids to join us." "What about my mother and father?" I asked carefully. "They've been invited too, but with clear expectations about behavior." Eleanor had a rather direct conversation with your mother about how family members are to be treated in our home. The Thanksgiving gathering was tense at times, but ultimately healing. My mother was noticeably subdued, lacking her usual audience for critical comments. My father seemed relieved by the structure Eleanor subtly imposed. Natalie, 6 months into marriage and faced with her husband's obvious affection for his niece and nephew, made awkward but genuine attempts to connect with Tyler and Emma. After the holiday, Natalie reached out and asked if we could meet for coffee. We sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe, both of us uncharacteristically nervous. I'm not good at this, she began after several minutes of small talk. Admitting when I've been wrong isn't exactly a skill Mom taught either of us. No, it wasn't, I agreed, waiting for her to continue. The wedding was a disaster, she said bluntly. Not because of the venue change, but because I let Mom convince me that appearances matter more than actual relationships. James was really upset with me afterward in ways I didn't expect. How so? He said he didn't recognize the person I became during the wedding planning. That excluding you and the kids showed a side of me he found disturbing. We've been in couples counseling since then. I was surprised by her candor. That couldn't have been easy to hear. It wasn't, but he wasn't wrong. She twisted her napkin nervously. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I know what we did was cruel. I just want to know if there's a way forward eventually. Tyler and Emma are the only niece and nephew I'll ever have, and I've been a terrible aunt. Healing takes time, I said carefully. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but it needs to be different than before. My priority is protecting my children from the kind of treatment we've all normalized for too long. Over the following months, Natalie made consistent, if sometimes awkward, efforts to connect with me and the children. She came to Tyler's school play. She remembered Emma's birthday with a thoughtfully selected art set rather than the usual generic gift card. Small steps, but meaningful ones. My mother proved less capable of change. She maintained that I had overreacted to the wedding situation and deliberately caused problems to get attention. When I held firm to my boundaries, she adopted a martyr position, telling extended family that I was keeping her grandchildren away and that she was trying so hard, but Randy makes it impossible. Eventually, I accepted that my relationship with my mother might never be what I had hoped for. Instead of endlessly trying to earn her approval or change her perspective, I focused on breaking the cycle with my own children. They would grow up knowing their worth didn't depend on meeting impossible standards or fitting someone else's image of perfection. The family you're born into isn't always the family that nurtures you, I explained to Tyler one evening after a particularly difficult phone call with my mother. Sometimes we have to create our own chosen family of people who love us as we are. Like Aunt Zoe and Miss Barbara next door, he asked. Exactly. And now Uncle James and the Wilsons, too. And we're family, the three of us. Emma added, with the simple wisdom of childhood. The best family. As I hugged my children close, I reflected on the painful journey that had led us to this point of greater health and authenticity. The wedding text that had initially felt like such a devastating rejection had ultimately been the catalyst for profound change. By standing up for myself and my children, I had broken generations of toxic patterns and created space for genuine connections to flourish. Forgiveness, I was learning, didn't require reconciliation with those who remained committed to harmful behavior. It meant releasing the anger that tied me to the pain while maintaining the boundaries that protected our well-being. It meant acknowledging the reality of who people were, rather than clinging to fantasies of who I wished they would become. Most importantly, it meant teaching my children, through example, that love shouldn't hurt. That family should be a source of support rather than stress. And that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from relationships that diminish, rather than enhance, your life. Today, 2 years after that fateful wedding text, our lives have found a new equilibrium. My relationship with Natalie continues to slowly heal through mutual effort and respect. James has become the kind of uncle my children deserve. The Wilsons have embraced us as genuine family members. My father makes occasional efforts to connect on his own terms rather than as my mother's messenger, and my mother remains at a carefully managed distance, allowed limited access under specific conditions. It isn't the family story I would have written for myself as a young girl, but it's authentic, honest, and ultimately healthier than the facade we maintained for so many years.